So, amazing journey of one of our leading entrepreneurs. And now Shaheen Mistry, who again, if I may say, is someone whose heart led her into setting up what are, in fact, two of India's leading not-for-profit organizations, Akanksha first, and I know what she ran at Akanksha. My daughter actually began to spread her wings in the space of understanding and working with young children through the Akanksha that was built by Shaheen. And then, of course, going on for Teach for India, which she has built. And her journey there is a great journey. Shaheen is almost too shy to tell it, but her chapter is a very lyrical chapter which describes what led her into this amazing space which she leads with such passion and which actually touches on countless young people around our country. So Shaheen, over to you.
I just want to echo the gratitude. I think Naina's book has given such a voice to the work that we do at Akanksha and Teach for India, so thank you for that. By way of introduction, I'm just going to share a story from the week. On Saturday, I was visiting one of our schools and one of our teachers ran up to me down the corridor and she said, I have to tell you what's happened with 3 of my kids. So she's teaching in a BMC school, municipal school in Mumbai, and now she's moved to Pune and she's teaching in another school in Pune. So she says her kids call her up to say that they wanted to go to an international school. They reached class 7 and they wanted to go to the Lexicon International School, so they showed up at the school, they went to the office, and the people in the office in Hindi told them, this is not a school for BMC kids, you can leave. So they said, wait a minute, our Didi has told us about the right to education and about the 25% reservation and that you cannot deny us the ability to interview in your school. Cut a long story short, they went through the interview process. They were told at the interview process that they outperformed all the other kids that applied that year, and they got into the school. And then 2 weeks ago, this boy who's now in the school calls her up in Pune and says, Didi, I have to tell you there's a big problem with our school. And so she says, what's the problem? And he says, you know how at Teach for India, you all teach us that first we have to have a vision and big goals? There's no vision and big goals in our school. So can you mail me a PowerPoint so that I can do a training session at my school for my teachers? And like, you know, my reason for existence, I love the way that you shared yours. My reason for existence is that day when I don't have to tell that story and you don't have to clap because it's so normal, you know? And yet today we're so far in our country because these examples do make us so excited, me in telling it, you in hearing it. And so that's me, I think. I've just spent, 25 years in trying to solve that problem. How do we end inequity in the country and hold that bar of excellence that Kiran spoke about for every person, irrespective of background, irrespective of where they are, what they want to do. I tell my Teach for India fellows, don't try to provide your children some education. Try to say how can they go further than where you are today. And so I'm very happy to be here. One last quick thing, we actually launched in Bangalore a month ago. So today and yesterday were my first journey into visiting our fellows who've been teaching anywhere from 3 days to 1 month in government schools, Kannada medium schools in the city. So that's very, very exciting and so excited to be here.
So are you recruiting other fellows and people from this audience?
Most definitely.
What are you looking for?
I think just support in every possible way, in spreading an awareness, in pushing people to change their mindsets about what's possible with kids, in coming in and volunteering in the schools, giving resources into the schools. None of the schools have libraries, science labs, basic resources in schools. So anyone that wants to get engaged, please feel free to drop me an email and we'll definitely find a way.
So I'm not going to let you off so lightly because I knew that you were going to hold back. You talk about from dreaming how the world could be, I started dreaming of how we could get there. And that's the journey that you describe in your book. I read your chapter, I think, yet again for probably the 100th time, Shaheen. And I want you to just share with the audience your story of Latif, because it still brings tears to my eyes.
Sure. So this is the story that I've told most often in my life, just to keep it alive for myself as well. I have many, many wonderful stories of kids, just blessed to have met so many incredible kids who've shaped me. But this was, you know, they always tell you as a teacher, don't have a favorite. I always had my favorites, and this story is about one of my favorites. So Latif came into one of our classrooms when he was around 10 years old. And unlike most kids who enter our classrooms and the teachers want to tear their hair out because they're so naughty and it takes them so long to settle down, Latif was the opposite. He was just good at everything. He was this incredible, handsome, talented, friendly, incredible kid. I describe him best as one of those rare people who all of us have in our lives where when they walk into the room, the whole room just becomes a little bit better just because of their presence in the room. So anyway, Latif was from a very poor family, lived in a 10-foot by 10-foot square home, didn't have a father, lived with a grandfather who adored him to death. He sort of lived for his grandfather. His dream was to get his grandfather to stop working and so to earn enough money. So while he was in college, he was coming to Akanksha, he was in college, he was the star of our big musical. He was doing all these things and he was working at Cafe Coffee Day at night so that he could earn enough for his grandfather to stop working. Fast forward a couple of years after we staged this big musical, everything's going wonderfully in Latif's life and he suddenly passes away, gets an acute respiratory illness and 12 hours later, I'm on my way to Pune. By the time I reach back to Mumbai, Latif is gone. The reason I tell this story is the next morning I was in his home with his grandfather and his grandfather said, he said, Didi, you know, I knew Latif was really unwell and so I took 14,000 rupees that I had earned over many months and I put it in Latif's hand and I said, Latif, promise me you won't go to a government hospital. Promise me you'll go to a good doctor. And because Latif didn't want his grandfather to go back to work, he took that money, hid it under the bed, went to a government hospital, passed away 12 hours later. Again, I have no idea about whether the outcome would have been any different. Maybe it was his time to go. But I know what happened that day was I changed. Something in me just shifted. I think for many years I had felt I knew what it meant to give. And I think Latif told me that I didn't have any idea of our human capacity to give of ourselves. And I thought if this 20-year-old could have that much unconditional love in his heart for another human being, such that he would put his life on the line for someone that he cared about, then of course I can do that little bit more every day, even when I think I've done enough. Yeah.
14,000 bucks and the love of a grandfather. So let's go over to Shereen, who's here and who I can get to question yet again. So Shereen, so tell us a little bit about your growing up. And Shereen is one of those faces, I don't know about you guys, but I certainly get to see every day because I always want to know what she's saying and what she's covering. And then I suddenly found that I actually didn't know her at all when I got to read the chapter she has shared with us. So, Shereen, over to you.
Thank you very much, Naina, and apologies for joining you all late, but unfortunately I had an interview at 2 o'clock which finished at 2:45, so I could get here just in time to get a spot here with all these lovely ladies. You know, I have to be honest, when Roopa and Naina reached out and asked if I would do a chapter for the book, I wasn't quite sure whether I would make for interesting reading at all, because I've always believed that I'm perhaps one of the world's most boring people. I don't really have a very interesting story to tell. Most of my days are consumed with working about 15 hours a day, and that leaves very little room for anything interesting or remotely interesting to do. So I didn't know what I was going to write about. But then I thought that over the years of interviewing women in business, essentially, and also women in politics and government, I think we always celebrate their success, we always talk about their achievements, but very often we don't talk about the struggle that they've been able to go through to get to the positions that they are in. We don't talk about how hard it is to get to those positions of power. And I think in a sense, in the media, we also tend to glamorize the success, and it makes it look very, very easy. And so for young women who actually come into the business world or who try and make careers for themselves, they come in with this very rosy picture of what it's going to be like. And I thought that the effort on my part would be to give as much of an honest sort of portrayal of what it has been of building a career the last 15 years at CNBC TV 18. Just to take you through my growing up years, my father was a fighter pilot in the Indian Air Force, and so for us it meant packing our bags and starting afresh every 2 years. And I think that made me much more resilient. I think it made me understand the importance of adaptability, and I think that also teaches you that the importance of merit, because you don't carry any baggage with you. You could have been the favorite in a classroom today, but tomorrow it's all over and you have to start afresh. So coping with change was something that I learned very early on in life. I think what it also taught me was the value of relationships, the value of keeping your feet firmly on the ground, of not being swayed or tempted by money, for instance. Money means very little to me, perhaps why I've stayed on with one company, which people find it very weird in today's time that I've stayed on with the company for the past 15 years. But that's because money has never been a motivating factor as far as I'm concerned. I've always wanted to create something, be part of building an institution. And I think those are the values that I grew up with. I grew up with a very fiercely protective set of parents who never made me feel that I couldn't do something merely because I was a girl. Both me and my sister have made choices that are unconventional. She's a dancer, she teaches and she has her own school. I'm a journalist, and we were always allowed to make our choices, and I think that's very important, and that's a message that I wanted to send out in my chapter, that very often as women, and especially as young girls when we're growing up, a lot of our choices are dictated by fear. And especially when you get into your careers, a lot of our choices are also dictated by who's going to say what. Somebody is going to say something every single day. So I've learned to cope with the idea that people are going to have opinions. It's important to sort of block the surround sound, and it's important to stay true to who you are and what you believe in. And I think that's essentially helped me get to where I am today. You know, you hear people talk about excellence and wanting to create something. I've always believed in the philosophy of just wanting to improve every day, whether it's my work or it's my outlook and approach to life or myself. My endeavor has been one of constantly improving. And I think that's held me in good stead. So yeah, I'm still struggling to learn the art of saying no. I'm still struggling to negotiate a better deal for myself when the need arises, because I think I'm uncomfortable talking about things that I believe in and, you know, what I should rightfully deserve. And I think a lot of the women that I've spoken to over the years express the same inability to ask for what they rightfully deserve. And I think having sort of passionately embraced the lean-in philosophy, I think it's important that women put themselves on the table, and I believe that women need to ask for what we believe that we rightfully deserve. So no holding back, or at least don't hold yourself back as much as we usually do. So those are the things that I'm currently struggling to unlearn and learn afresh.
we have many women who we see on television as anchors and in fact driving the discussion and debate, but very, very few like you who are right up there running and actually leading organizations. I hadn't realized how tough that life is, in that you describe not having a life. So tell us a little bit more about that and why you don't have a life and why you're so grateful that your mom can provide you your food and comfort and be your fashion consultant.
Yeah, all of that and more. But I think it's, you know, the television news business is an all-consuming business. I start my day at about 7 o'clock in the morning. I'm at work by 9, and because it's all live, I finish only at 10 o'clock at night, which means I never leave work before 10:30 at night. So that kind of tells you why I don't have a life. It's not something that I think that people, unless you're really committed to the process of content creation, unless you're really passionate about the broadcast journalism space, I don't think that it's a life that a lot of people would happily take to. But I am a creature of the news world, so I enjoy that, and, even with its downsides. But more than that, I think, you know, the stuff that you struggle with, and early on in my career, that you struggle with is that even though this is in that sense a sunrise sector, it's a nascent industry, and there's a lot of women within the industry, but you know, you still get seen from the gender perspective. It's always, I mean, nobody will ever comment on a male anchor and say, oh, let me introduce you to one of India's best looking, you know, whatever. And I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that you know, it's the stuff that you don't need to put up with, that gets thrown your way, and you know, it boxes you into the same old sort of stereotypes of, you know, you're a woman and you'll be judged by a certain characteristic, which I find has, you know, been the harder struggle to sort of cope with. And that also in a sense closes you, you know, you withdraw into your shell because you don't want to deal with that sort of stuff. But I think as a lot of us in the media, you know, you sort of develop thick skins about it, and you go about doing your business and you hope that your craft will speak for itself. But those are the sort of everyday struggles that you deal with. The time is the easy part of it or the hard part of it, I don't know. But it's this business of just saying that, you know, treat us for what we bring to the table every day in terms of the body of work, for the kind of stuff. I mean, I run India's longest running show on entrepreneurship. It's a show that's completed 14 years. Nowhere in the world has a show on startups completed 14 years. You know, talk about that. But you know, very often the conversation will veer around all the other stuff, but not about what you've actually done. So which I have a problem with, and I hope that we will see that change.